welcome to Lessons Learned from the Master Service Advisor. Can I ask real quick, how many of you were in my session yesterday? Any of you from the day before? Some of you have been, oh my gosh, 3 days in a row. I'm sorry. Thank you. Appreciate it. Welcome, and I think I probably have a few new faces in here and as well. This is hands down the class I've been most excited to... Whoop, there you are. I have to be on this because that wasn't working, so it's okay. Don't worry about it. Thank you. This is the class I've been most excited to teach, and most excited for a couple reasons. I think the service advisor position, as was mentioned, is the biggest position for generating loyalty in our department, and it in a lot of our stores has the biggest opportunity for improvement. And so thank you so much for being here with us. How many of you here in the room actually do write service tickets? Okay, and how many of you manage the service department in some capacity? Excellent. Well, you're going to have some great tools that are brought to you. I want to just briefly mention who in the world I am for the few of you that maybe haven't been in my class before. Valerie Zebron, that's me with my first car, my 1967 Dodge Cornet 440. And that car took me through high school and college shop classes. When I graduated, I had my mechanics license in a few different areas, and I started working with Chrysler. My first job was not exactly what I was looking for, but it was a lot of fun. I got to travel around the country and say intelligent things like, "Beneath the supple muscular contours of its composite plastic body lies the solidity and strength of a space frame chassis." Viper script. Thank you. So I traveled with the auto show for a bunch of years, and then they realized I actually knew something about cars, and they said, you could maybe do some work as a corporate trainer, but you need to go work in a dealership. I said, okay. I had the whole summer off. I said, what type of position should I do at the dealership? They said, you should be a service writer. I said, that sounds like fun. So I went to my first 2 dealerships, and I said, hi, I do work with the auto show. I'd like to come be a service writer for you. And they laughed at me, literally. One actually said, why would I want a Barbie doll distracting my technicians? So, oh, man. A little dejected, I went to my 3rd dealership. It was a Chrysler Plymouth Dodge Suzuki dealership in Longmont, Colorado, and I took a different approach. I met the service manager, and I said, I'd like to write service, and I am willing to do it for free. He said, I'll see you Monday. And I don't know what your formal service advisor training was like, but for me it was basically, there's your computer, there's your phone, good luck. We were a pretty decent sized shop, and we were a flat rate shop, so there were 3 service advisors. On one side of me was what I refer to as my revolving door position. We had a new service advisor in this position every 2 to 6 weeks. Each one seemed to leave a path of destruction in their wake. Have you ever worked with one of those? Every customer mad. It was just a mess. Then over here was somebody, if you've been coming to my workshops, you've been hearing me talk about for a long time. Over here's a guy named Master Service Writer Dan Fujiwara. And Dan was unbelievable. This guy could handle 2 to 3 times more tickets than the 2 of us combined. He's handling all this work, but it was infuriating. His phones hardly ever rang. And I started watching what Dan was doing. I'm like, how is he managing this? He never has angry customers. He's always kind of handling things in a different way. Me and this other guy are running around like chickens with our heads cut off, but Dan seems calm. When he's working with a customer, he's happy. It's like he's greeting one of his friends. He seems to remember everything he's ever done on the unit before, what he had told him before is going to be needing down the pike. When he's selling with the customer, he's selling with confidence. Dan was a huge proponent of walkarounds. It did not matter, rain, sleet, shine, snow. He was out there doing walkarounds. And whenever he would see something, he wouldn't talk about it. Like sometimes you go to a car rental place and they're like, there's a scratch here, sign off on this. No. Dan wouldn't say a word. He'd just go over and he'd touch it. And if you go over and touch it, what will the customer do? Oh, man, well, that's when I was teaching my wife how to... It doesn't look that bad, sir. Can I get an estimate on that thing while it's in here? Dan was amazing at upselling. He would basically be talking to somebody. He'd be like, man, we just had a truck just like yours in. It was so cool. The guy had accessorized it. It was amazing. Well, really? What did he have on his truck that I don't have on my truck? Dan's tickets, his hours per RO, were through the roof. And one of my favorite things about Dan was we were a real seasonal shop. We had our busy seasons, our slow seasons. Dan always seemed to be busy. And I started looking at what he did. When he was closing out a ticket, Dan would look at everything on the ticket and say, was there anything we didn't do? Because we didn't have parts, or we didn't get approval, or we didn't have enough time, or the customer declined the work, or they just didn't need it right now. And this was like 20-some years ago. Dan would make himself a little Post-it note. And he would write down what that customer needed, what had coming up, and he'd get his big old daytimer out. And he'd say, well, a customer needs to worry about this in about, a week, or 3 weeks, or 3 months. And he'd put the Post-it note in his daytimer. So every single day when Dan comes in and he opens up his daytimer, what's he looking at? Gravy. When it got slow in there, so we were a flat rate shop, when it got slow, the techs would come over and be like, Dano, what you got in the book? He'd have to smack their hands, get out of there. If he was busy that week, he'd just move those Post-its forward. If it was slow, he'd go digging in there, see what he's got. But when he was talking to a customer, he wasn't just saying, hey, let's talk about fall or winterization. He'd be talking about specifically what the tech found the last time. How many times have we got a ticket and there's work on it that we have already diagnosed, we already have a parts request for, we've already done the heavy lifting, but we just don't get paid? Dan made sure that he always got paid. And I'm so thrilled to actually get to introduce you to, if you haven't met him before, Master Service Writer Dan. Please join me in welcoming the guy who inspires most of my service work, Dan Fujiwara. So Dan's going to be available to kind of talk on some of the main points that we discuss. If you have not currently opened it, open up your workbook, because we're going to be digging into this thing. We're going to look specifically at what it takes to become a master service writer. So Dan, thanks for being here with us, and I know you're going to have a lot of good insight for us.
Guys, Greg, good morning. Thank you for having me. Sorry about that.
Awesome. No, absolutely. So, Dan, I've got a first question for you. It's right here in your workbook. What would you say the differences are between a service advisor who's great at building customer loyalty and profitability and ones who are not?
Customer retention, profitability.
So what actually gets an advisor to be good at this versus ones who aren't all that great at it?
It comes from internal processes, things that they do in each store that make your process great for that advisor, for your working condition.
So one of the things that we've noticed through the years is a lot of stores come to us and say, well, we can't do that in our store. And Dan and I first started in the auto industry together, but we've since started working with marine dealers. Gosh, how long ago? Probably about 10 years?
10 years.
Yeah. So we've been in a lot of different marine dealerships together, and one of the things we wind up hearing a lot is people saying, that won't work in our store. We can't do walk-arounds here. Or we can't do a value-added service sale here. We can't call customers back proactively. So what Dan and I have kind of found with working with marine dealers is this. You might not have a cookie-cutter approach like the auto industry has, but can we still have solid end results? Can you guarantee your customers will be called back? Yeah, I don't care how you do it. Can you guarantee that when you're scheduling work, the parts are there for it? Yeah, I don't care how you're doing it. Give your team some flexibility, some autonomy on how they're getting the job done, but be absolutely solid on what the end results must be. So we're going to specifically look at, in this session, what it means to be a master service advisor. I truly believe that they are not born, they're made. We have to want to be it. We have to catch the vision of it. The other thing we're going to look at is the tangibles. What is the mindset, the actual tools, and the habits? And lastly, I'm going to leave a bunch of time for Q&A, because the last time I brought Dan in, we had a line like 20 deep asking questions for him. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time to ask questions to Dan. So what is a master service advisor? Well, here's the definition. It is a noun. It is one who thrives in being both a dealership and a customer advocate by carefully choosing their thoughts, their actions, and their tools that build positive, lasting relationships. Now, I think one of the first words that jumps off the page there is thrive. A lot of times do service advisors feel like you're barely getting your head above water? Not thriving, surviving. Now, even the most master of service advisors, are they going to have time when they struggle? Dan, do you have times when you lose it? Absolutely. It's okay. You just have to think proactively in front of you. And then you got to also realize when you look at this definition that some people don't value people, but my master service advisors always value people. They kind of make you feel like they've got your back. Not just their customers, but also their coworkers, their sales department, their technician, their parts people. They create teamworks with these people. They don't fight the other departments. They figure out ways to work together with it. Now, if you've never worked with, seen a master service advisor, it can seem a little bit like a mythical creature. You can kind of be like, oh, you know, I wish we had one of those, but I don't think anybody could straighten out the organized chaos, or maybe not so organized chaos, that we have in our service department. But it's been neat to watch how different stores will come up with creative solutions to get that to happen. And when we selected the content for this course, we really said, what are the things that pretty much any store can apply in developing their master service advisor? So we're going to look at that a little more deeply. And as we do, I'd like you to keep a very, very open mind. Think about how you're currently doing your business, but also think about what service advisors could do to question and reevaluate and perfect their mindset, their tools, and their habits. So first things first is mindset. How do you currently think about your job, about the people you serve, and the people you work with? If you think negative thoughts about your people, even your manufacturers, is it going to have an impact on your actual relationship with them? Now, do some of these people make it hard? You got to be even more careful about your thinking when someone is trying your patience. You can't control other people, can you? But can you control your reaction? Can you control your level of professionalism no matter what or who you're dealing with? So I got a chance to interview quite a few of people that I consider to be master service advisors, and you're going to see some quotes throughout this from them. Hey, turn that music down. All right, so here's the first quote. He says, in order for people to buy from you with confidence, they have to know you, like you, and trust you. This service advisor said, this is a guiding principle for me. If I can get my customers and my internal team to know me, like me, and trust me, everything goes so much smoother. And that's really what it's all about, is doing your business in a way of integrity, thinking your thoughts in a way of integrity so people can trust you, so that they like you. They know you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Here's another quote I got, and I like this one a lot. This guy was honest. He said, you know what? It doesn't mean that I don't get frustrated or angry. I do. I feel it deeply sometimes. But then I choose to let it go, and I put my focus on what I can do to make the situation or to make the relationship better. Sometimes, honestly, there's nothing you can do, and you have to learn to be okay with that. Is that difficult sometimes? There's the injustice of it all, but you have to learn to just be okay with it. Controlling your own mind, or as Dan likes to say, have incredibly thick skin. So the mindset keys in a quick review here is to think positive about your coworkers, your manufacturer partners, your customers, even when they may not deserve it. If we at least keep projecting positive, that's going to probably give us some better results. Now, does that mean that we can't vent? Matter of fact, you probably should vent, but where should you vent to? Anywhere but at work. Vent behind the windshield, vent to your spouse, vent to your dog, your cat. Just don't bring it into the dealership. The next thing is choose to let anger, frustration, and other non-helpful emotions go. Focus on what's within your control. That's going to be hard enough. You can't get caught up in the drama of the rest of it. If it's outside of your control, just be at peace with it as much as you possibly can. And lastly, always be looking for ways to improve. All right, so the next thing we're going to head into is tools. Master Service Advisor is tools. It's not just enough just to think it. You actually have to get it done. The importance and the care that you give your tools, doesn't that say a lot about a person? When a technician takes care of their tools, kind of says, hey, they really take care of their business. Similarly, service advisors really need to make sure that we're taking care of our tools. Tools help you get the job done the right way and help us a little bit. So we're going to look at some of the fill in the blanks on that next page there. The first thing, and this was a fascinating one for me in watching Dan, is setting callback times with your customers. Now, yesterday I gave you a statistic that's pretty staggering. It says 90% of the phone calls coming into the service department are coming from less than 10% of your customers. Is it done yet? Did you get the parts in? Am I going to have it by the weekend? Is this reactive or proactive? It's incredibly reactive, and it's crushing our time. When you watch someone working proactively, they're setting callback time. So let me just tell you what I sort of observed with Dan. Whenever Dan was writing up a ticket, he would review it with the customer. He'd say, okay, Mr. Customer, here's your work order. Here are the things we're going to do. And then he'd say, I've got a few different contact methods from you. I got an email, I got a phone number here, a couple phone numbers. What's the absolute best way for me to get in touch with you? Is it important for us to make sure we're using the way that's good for the customer? Might not be as convenient for us, but we really need to reach out and make sure it's the best way for them. Contact the customer with their preferred method. And then he would put a little dot next to their preferred method, and he would tell them a specific time. He'd say, customer, I promise I'm going to give you some information. I'll stay in touch with you. You're going to hear from me no later than 1 p.m. Wednesday. And then he'd grab a card, he'd write 1 p.m. Wednesday, he'd give it to the customer, he'd say, but do me a favor, if you don't hear from me by 1 p.m. Wednesday, give me a call. In a really nice way, what is he saying to his customers? Don't call me, I'll call you. Can you train your customers? In the service department, isn't it important that we train at least the majority of them? You can't get everybody to follow along, but at least the majority of them is going to open up so much of our time for this. Now, here's the big question. How in the world do you remember to call them no later than 1 p.m. Wednesday? Well, Dan would use a route sheet back in the day. This was before computers were as good as they are. And he would just write down, here's my customer, here's the best way to reach them, and I'm going to call them by 1 p.m. Wednesday. Dan, I'm going to have you talk to them just for a minute about that route sheet and how important it is to you, what the route sheet means to you, and speak specifically to the customers who currently don't have an RO list open.
Well, the route sheet is daily operating business. You see every ticket, every customer, every job, every repair in front of you. And it's a tool for you to use to communicate to your team, to your service department, to your technicians, to your sales department, your parts department. Everybody kind of works at this at the same pace, and we all work together. It's a communication tool. And following up on that, as a rule of thumb, it's really great. When you're writing up your customer, your service writers are there on the drive with your customers at their trailers and their boats. And you can tell them, they see you doing the walk around, they see you talking, they see that you are not standing right next to the phone. It's a great time to train and inform them how we do business here. I'm going to call you today, tomorrow, whatever it be, between 11 and 12 o'clock. I'm going to give you an update. And I use that route sheet to check off and know that I did call them people every day. Because it's worse to tell somebody you're going to call them and then not call them. Okay, you leave a bad taste in their mouth. But if Valerie picked up the phone and said, Dan, Mr. Jones is calling, he needs an update, internally I would be mad at myself. I'd drop the ball. I want to make that call before that customer calls me. It's kind of the sales game. If I'm in control of that conversation, I'm proactive to it. I'm not reactive to the customer calling me.
You're so much more prepared for the call if you're making it proactively. When they call in, you're like, oh, which customer? What? How you get to pull it up on the computer, figure out what's going on? So being able to make those proactive calls and being in the age of technology where we can set reminders, where we can use our DMS systems to remind us of some of these things, it is a fantastic thing to utilize. Use professional communication skills. Advisors don't let customers hear frustration in their voice. They keep things very, very professional. I was in a store not too long ago that will remain nameless, and I heard someone was on the phone with a customer, and a technician walked in, and it was the first really cold day that we had had. It was freezing. And technician walks in and lets loose one heck of a tirade of swear words, and clearly the customer could hear it right into the phone. Do we need to maintain a professional relationship in the entire shop and make sure that, hey, customers could be within walking distance? This was a marina. There could be customers that are walking around there. We really want to keep our culture in the shop up and our professional communication skills. Proactively call the customers before they call us. If this is not something your team is currently doing, chances are you're running a pretty reactive shop. This can clear up so many hours in your day so that you can be in front of the 8-ball instead of behind it. So this is one of my favorite quotes from a master service advisor. He says, "You charge a guy $1,500 for a repair. If you stayed in touch with him throughout the process, he's pretty happy when he gets his boat back. But take that same guy and the same repair and don't communicate, watch out. You could take $600 off the bill and he is still ticked off." So how can you remember to honor your callback times? What specifically can you do? Dan, what methods have worked for you to remember to call them back?
The route sheet, number one. A route sheet, your DMS system, some kind of process you have in place that you can see and monitor every repair order you have available.
I remember this was, some of you will be old enough to remember, he also said he used the Dr. Pepper method, if I remember.
10, 2, and 4.
10, 2, and 4. He'd set his callback times for certain times in the day, and that would be kind of a trigger. Every day at 10, every day at 2, every day at 4. He knew he probably had some callback times to make with that. But no matter what method you're using, making sure that you are tracking it, that it becomes your central command post so you know who you need to check on, which parts you need to check on. Now, I said earlier, I don't really care what method you use, but I wanted to just share some of the methods that we see out there. Some places use a tangible schedule sheet or a pad. Some places use an actual route sheet. And by the way, if you guys currently aren't using anything, we brought a bunch of route sheets with us like these. You can kind of come and grab one after, and if you want to start using something like that, great. Now this one, it's kind of hard to see the picture. They're not backlit very well here, but this was a software company that's currently an exhibitor here. I'm not allowed to endorse any software company, but I went into a dealership and I saw that, I don't know if you can tell, this is in a 3-ring binder. They actually have an online scheduling system, but why do you think they print it out on a 3-ring binder and keep it at the service counter? Aha, so customers can see it. They're in a very, very high-end area here, and they've got customers that want service now. If you just say to them it's 2 weeks out, are they going to believe you? But if you open up the book and they can visually see, wow, look at all that work they've got scheduled in. I also heard somebody else say they can take it with them. It's then portable. I can go to parts. When I see the parts truck pull up, I can take this with me and say, okay, here are all the open tickets that I'm waiting on parts for. Let's see which ones of these I can open up and get into scheduling because we now have all the parts available. Now, in this same shop where they have the computer system, they have the 3-ring binder, they also have, hard to see, a white erase board. And this is at their technician's workstation. So I got text computers down there, little plastic files for where they've got work orders. There is no question in this shop what the heck is going on. Is there any type of a thing as over-communicating with your service team? I don't believe so. I haven't seen it. So whatever method works for you. But can you agree in looking at this example from this dealership here that it has to generate from the computer system? You can't have one person using a route sheet, somebody else using a white erase board, and then the third person using the computer. The information has to be updated on the computer, and then the other ways follow from it. Yes? Whatever method works best for your store. I think a lot of people keep looking at saying, what method works? Hey, I don't care. Maybe you just go and spend $5 in an office supply store and get some plastic trees. If that's how you're tracking them and you've got them there, then great. The bottom line is I don't want to ever lose an RO. I'm going to tell you a sad story from one of our dealerships. They said the wife brought in the boat, and her husband was serving overseas. And she said, you know, he's coming back in 2 weeks. He's going to have a nice break. I know he's going to want to take the kids fishing. So whatever it needs, just fix the boat up so he can enjoy it while he's on leave. They lost the work order. They weren't tracking their open ROs. The husband comes home. He's like, where's the boat? She said, oh, I took it in 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard from them, but I'm sure they're pretty much done. He's like, oh, they're good guys in there. I don't want to bug them. He wound up calling them about 4 or 5 days before his last weekend and said, hey, I don't want to bug you guys, but, you know, any idea, you know, when my boat might be ready? What boat? If you're the service advisor, how big do you feel right now? Wop, 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 wop. I got to ask you, is there any chance that your service department could lose an RO? Because if that's a yes right now, you got to make it tangible. If all the information in your service department is located between two ears, are you in trouble? We got to take this from somebody's brain and put it on a system that everybody in the store can do something with. So I'll tell you a little bit about the scheduling system that Dan introduced me to way back in the day. We had a 3-ring binder. Thank God Dan was there to teach me a little bit of something about service writing. And he said, okay, Valerie, in our shop, you're going to actually have to dispatch tickets to our technicians, and we're all going to be scheduling work, so we need to be careful with this. I had no idea how to schedule work. I had no idea how to dispatch stuff. He said, here's the 3-ring binder. You get a customer, and you kind of listen to what their issues are. You say, you know what, that sounds a little bit like an electrical issue. I'd made a dispatch guide sheet. I'd say, this is really the job that I think would be best, the tech would be best for this job based on their training, their education. We'd open up the 3-ring binder. Each technician had a tab. So that sounds like a job for Fritz. I always try to give stuff to Fritz. He was good. Open that up, and I'd be like, okay, here is a day timer, basically, of what's available. Now, if I've got 8 hours in a day, how much time should I book for my guys? 6? Yeah, I want to make sure I'm not overbooking them, right? There's going to be some times for emergency, some times for rigging and things of that nature. When I'm opening the book and I'm sharing this with a customer, does it seem fair? Do they want the best tech on the job? You know, the best guy for this is, they're a little more willing to wait for the best guy. Does your guy think he's the best guy anyway? See, this is a marriage made in heaven. You just need to combine the two together. So the cool thing about the schedule, we'd always write in the schedule in what kind of instrument? Pencil, something you can erase, something that's going to be flexible. We put it in the schedule. When the technicians came up to us, they never had to ask us, what's the next job? They never had the opportunity to cherry pick what their next job was. They saw the next one in order was this one. There was a highlighter attached to the 3-ring binder. They would highlight what job they were working on. I never had to go into the shop. I could look in the book and know what every single one of my guys was working on. This is pretty sweet. Now, the other cool thing about the 3-ring binder is Dan had not only trained the service drive on this, but he had also trained the lot attendants. Hey, guys, here's what you need to look at. We need to get the next job staged. So come in here, see what those next jobs are, bring those things up so they're easy for the techs to pull in. Dan had also trained our parts guys. Hey, guys, this is the schedule. Look at these. Make sure if we don't have all the parts for these next jobs, please come to me so I can reschedule, so that we have everything we need. Can the service department create a bottleneck with the advisor where a lot of people are trying to talk to them? You've got customers, you've got sales, you've got all the phones ringing, the texts are... If you have a process, there's less likely they have to come to you. You can just look at the system and see what specifically is going on. Now, no matter what system you use, I love this quote from a master advisor. He says, you know, it's a lot like housekeeping. If you wait, it becomes a mess and it's a huge job. But if you stay on top of it, it's a little bit more maintenance and it's a lot easier. And that is so true. In your high season, no matter what system you're using, there's going to be times when you fall off the turnip truck and it just isn't accurate anymore. Doesn't mean your system isn't working. It just means you need to take a little time, straighten it up, and get back on it. So the next tool that the service advisor likes to use is visual selling tools. I talk a lot about something called the 80-20 visual principle. It suggests that if we tell a customer about something that their boat needs, they're only 20% likely to believe us. But if they visually see it and we tell them, it's 80% likely that they trust us and they buy it. Now, I've seen a lot of maintenance menu boards out there, but just recently, and it's hard to see that bottom left-hand picture, I thought this was pretty slick. There's a dealership down in Texas, and they had gotten a big flat screen monitor. They're not very expensive these days, and that was basically their menu board. So they could switch up the specials, they could switch up the pricing, whatever they needed to do to be able to have that strong visual in the service drive. Now, it's not enough just to have those visuals, you also have to train your people on how to use them. They have to be speaking to it. Another huge part of it is service inspection forms. My favorite type of inspection forms are basically the type where the service advisor does the walk around and the technician is also going to do a bit of a safety inspection. But Dan, I want you to talk about kind of what your experience has been with inspection forms and how you like to present those to the customer, because it is so powerful.
I'm really a believer in service inspection forms. I believe it's one of the largest, the greatest tool that we have in the service department to deal with our customers. Basically, during the write-up process, it's the first time we're face-to-face with the customer and their vehicle. So it's our time to shine, all right? Why does that customer come to us? They come to us for quality. They come to us for professionalism. They come to us to have their boat taken care of. We're going to give that with a service inspection form. It's going to help us present items that are often overlooked. It's going to help us present items to do in the future. It's going to give us a tool to communicate with the customer in their terms. Your advisor should use it each and every time. I believe the two most important times in the service department is write-up with the service inspection form and the consultation on the next visit with the service inspection form. So I'm a real strong believer it's an important thing in every single service department, in every single transaction, and I believe it's something y'all should have as a process in each one of your service departments.
Cool, thanks, Dan. You know, one of the other things that I noticed that you would do is Dan would always menu sell. He'd say, you know, what did you call it? This is the stuff you'd need right now. What was the...
And what I like to do is I call that RIM, okay? When I'm trying to close a customer doing the inspection form, it helps me. It's like Valerie's PowerPoint. It helps us stay on track. I'm going to discuss the repairs that we've found. Secondly, I'm going to discuss the immediate attention items with the customer. These are broke, these are serious, these are the items that we need to do right now. And by the way, Mr. Customer, the following is maintenance. These are maintenance items that are also due, and present them to the customer in a price as a package deal. We can do them all, or help prioritize these things for your customer. If nothing else, as an advisor, it's given me the opportunity to build rapport with you as my customer. And as an advisor, I should be listening to your buying clues. I need to know how to deal with you professionally and in the future, now and in the future.
So Dan, we've run across this quite a bit where we've got service advisors who feel nervous about selling more than X dollar amount. Have you ever worked with somebody like that? They want the ticket to be less than, or else they get nervous. What would you say to an advisor who thinks, or I know recently you had someone who said, I don't like to upsell to anybody who's still under warranty who might get a CSI card for us because they're not going to like that. What's your approach to those ideas?
Well, my thought about that first is the customer is really paying for that service when he brings his boat into you, okay? It's my responsibility as the service advisor to relay all of the information that the technician and parts department has provided me with. It's not my determination to judge the customer's income, how much money the customer has, or how attached they are to their boat. Are they going to spend the money on it in the future?
Awesome. Good stuff. Thanks, Dan. If you've got somebody currently at your service drive who's afraid to sell, is this something that we discussed as a coachable moment? We need to work with them about that. From a management standpoint, we're going to talk a little bit later about what you as managers can do to make sure that your service advisors are doing a good job of this. Dan's got some great tips on that, but hang on to that because we're going to go a little further in this. Pictures and graphics are so powerful at the service advisor's disposal. We talked yesterday about just, shooting a text message over to a customer with a picture showing them the corrosion or what we found when we tore the motor open. Having visuals available to you, like the difference between OEM versus aftermarket with some of the filters and other things available, really builds value for our customers when they can see it. Even just your business card, being able to use your business card as a visual tool is a great thing. And any type of counter displays. Some places I've seen actually have fuel phase separation of ethanol. It's a great way to sell your things for ethanol care. So anything that helps them sell, that helps them visualize, relate to it, even keeping pictures of jobs so you can say, hey, look what happened with this one, is really, really good. Now, the ultimate tool is really your computer and your dealer management software. Anybody in here old enough to have worked in service, written up tickets before computers? Oh my gosh, look at these old times. Did it seem simpler back then? Can it be easy to complain about your dealer management software? But honestly, this is your ultimate tool. This helps us get so much more efficiency. You can handle so many more work orders, and you can generate so many more reports, but only if you're using it, only if you fully understand what it is. So they're not all perfect, and we could certainly pick them apart, but better to figure out what you can do with your DMS and try and work around it whenever possible. Work with it as much as possible, rather, and if it can't do it, then work around it. So we'll talk about some things specifically with it. If you don't currently know your DMS really, really well, one of the things I always like to suggest is talk to your provider, see what type of training that they offer, but more importantly, ask them what other dealers use the software. If you can talk with somebody else who's doing your job on a day in, day out basis and learn from them what the tools are that they're using, how they're using it, this is really some of the better learning I've found even than what you're getting in some cases through the DMS. So I loved this quote that we got from a master advisor. They said, "Take care of your tools and your tools will take care of you." Now I have to tell you, I got this quote from somebody who attended MDCE 2 years ago, and I had noticed that he was working on his iPhone or Android, I'm not sure which one it was, while we were doing some workshops, and I talked to him about it later. He said, "If I leave the dealership, work carries on because of the tools I have in place. People don't have to ask me. They can actually just look at my board or my notes in the computer and know exactly where we are with something. They don't have to ask me what the next jobs are, what we're approved for. It's all right there." Is that the sign of a true master service advisor? Using your tools, making your tools tangible, allowing the team in the dealership to do their jobs better by using those processes. You know, I look at the difference between ma and pa dealerships and franchises. Is there a difference? I think one of the big things that you look at is the success rate of franchises tends to be so much higher than it is of a lot of the ma and pa's. Profitability is a little higher. With our dealerships, are you reliant on having the right person in the position? At a franchise, are they as concerned about the right person? Can they put kind of anybody in there within reason? Why? It's the process. It's making sure you've got the processes. Now, I want to ask you, be honest, how many of you would say your process has a little room for improvement at the dealership? So go back and look at it. How can we make it visual? How can we make it tangible? What do we need to do to get everyone involved and using the same process? So we had 3 service advisors. Can that be chaotic? You got 3 people scheduling. You got 3 people dispatching. That could be a mess. But if we're all using the exact same system and we're honoring it, it's going to go so much better. And in some cases, you don't even have to be there for the system to work. So in a recap for the tools, use your phones, your emails, your texts proactively. Call them before they call you. Choose a system and stick with it. I think some places are always trying to, well, that didn't work. We tried it for a week. That didn't work. They switch it up. They do something. You're going to make your team crazy. Just pick something. Stick with it. Really try to make that work. Use it for tracking your ROs, for your scheduling, for your dispatch, and for your callbacks. Create and utilize visual selling tools. These help you. Customers will sell themselves if we utilize the tools. And lastly, learn and use your computer. Actually, I don't think there's the last one. There's one more. Learn and use your computer system. Stop fighting it. It's here to stay. Computers aren't going away, so use it. Lastly, always be developing your tools. Tweak it. Each year's a little bit better, especially in your slower season. Really look at what you can do next season to be even better with it. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is habits. And habits are funny things. We all have them, good, bad, indifferent. How did you get that habit? What actually created that habit? What are the habits of the service advisor? Well, let's look at one habit right here. And is it a habit or isn't it? Is being on time a habit? I told Dan to meet me at 8:30 this morning. I should have known better. He called me at like 8:10. I'm here. He's not on time. He's always early, which is a great thing. But is that a habit? I kind of look at it this way. Being on time, the fill in the blank, is the result of habits. The habits are making sure you're prepared to be on time. You're writing it down. You're putting a reminder in the phone or computer. You're planning for it. You're allowing time for emergencies and even simple things like making sure you got enough gas in the car to make sure you're on time. Similarly, when you look at service advisor habits, I think a lot of times we look at the result. We say, okay, being on time, that's the habit. No, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's the stuff they're doing leading up to it. So take, for example, we said doing callbacks. If you're calling customers proactively, is that a habit? Partially, but if we break it down, are you actually telling the customer about the callback time when you're first initially talking to them at the write-up? Because that's a habit. Are you actually putting that callback in a open RO list somewhere or a callback reminder that you're going to look at on a daily basis that's going to make it happen for you? Are you setting those phone reminders? Those are the types of habits. I mean, I used to like watching Dan. He would check his route sheet religiously. If he lost it, oh my gosh, where's the route sheet? He
They used to
relied
hate
on
me at night because I would make everybody stay until we filled that out every night. Because when I come in the morning, I want to see that, and I want to be on top of my game. I want to hit the ground running.
It's an incredible difference in our stores that come in ready to hit the ground running than the stores that don't. A body at rest tends to stay at rest. If your people come in the morning and their work isn't ready for them, have we just set the pace for the rest of the day? But if they come in and we did our work the night before and the parts are ready, the ROs are ready, the units are actually staged, are we going to have a way more productive day today? What you do in that morning, what you do in that night before, those are the habits that make the actual productivity increase. So when you look at the habit of preparing for your day, it actually does start the night before you leave the shop, and it also happens what you're doing at home. How many of you would say you have a switch? You can flip it off. You're at work, you're at home. You're at work, you're at home. If you're not careful, can they run into each other? You have a bad day at work, it can ruin your day. You're having a tough day at home, it can ruin your work. Being able to flip the switch, kind of working on that skill set is incredibly important. So the night before, just making sure you're getting enough rest. If you watch nothing but the news, are you going to have a really negative attitude? You know, I had a meeting with somebody yesterday after yesterday's session, and she mentioned to me when she drives into the dealership, she actually works with her husband, but they drive separately. I think that's a great best practice. She said, I go pick up my own coffee. I make sure I have my own time. I listen to some good motivational stuff on my way in. Is she doing a good job preparing herself for the next day's work, for going in there with the right mindset? Starts at home, putting good food, good energy, filled things, getting enough rest, making sure you're organized so you don't have to worry about that stuff at work. The next habit is to communicate, communicate, communicate. How many of you do regular shop meetings? I mean, at least once a week. Oh, not enough hands. Those of you who didn't put your hand up, put that down on an action plan to go back to the store. Shop meetings, communicate. Some of my stores do it daily. It's not quick. It doesn't have to be a complaint session. It's just quickly, I like having an agenda, saying, hey guys, here's the agenda for the shop meeting. This, and this. Make sure you're telling them about stuff they're doing good, and make sure you're talking to them about areas we want to improve a little bit. If they have complaints, you ever seen it go south really quick? Give them a way to complain. Say, if you guys have any complaints or thoughts, put it on this card and turn it into me. And we'll address that in a future meeting, or we'll talk about it later. But don't let your shop meetings be dictated by the whims of the people working in your shop. So the other habit is to document. Document. And what are we documenting? We're documenting the work order. That means we got to document the computer in most cases. We may have a hard copy, a paper copy, and also the computer. Got to be in the computer. And then there's the thing called the 4 C's. A lot of people look at it as the 3 C's, but really there's 4. It's the original customer concern. Service advisors are going to write down whatever hopefully the customer says, but putting it in the phrasing of customer states. If you have somebody who's very technically knowledgeable at the service counter, can this get us into trouble? They start diagnosing at the drive. They start writing down not what the customer says, but what they think it might be. This is not the route we want to go. So make sure customer concern. After a proper diagnostic, the tech's going to tell us what the cause of the concern is. We hopefully call the customer at that point, update them, get approval for something. Then we'll fix it, tell them what the correction is and what the cost is. At this point is also when we should be documenting who we spoke to, what our promise times, and what our promise estimates are going to be. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about those walkarounds because I know that's not happening near enough in a lot of our stores. It's challenging. If you're at a marina and they're far away or the boat's not always there when you're doing the write-up, you're doing the write-up over the phone with people. But really, this is your best opportunity to gain understanding and trust with the customer. Prioritize this time. Use it wisely. I also want to point out statistically, this is your number one chance to get a yes. A lot of times, especially if you're face-to-face with a customer, that initial walk-around is your best yes time. Dan, I know you're just itching to talk about this, so okay, have at it.
I really think this is the best time, and I kind of, went on that before. What does your dealership bring to the table, okay? Why do your customers come to you? OEM parts, OEM quality, OEM training, the relationship you have with your customers. Does your advisor relay that to your customer doing the walk around? Go back to your stores and look. Put yourself in your customer's place, okay? When they're out there doing that walk around, is that the way you would want your $200,000 boat? That the way you would want to treat it as a customer? It's such a huge, important time. And like I said, I consider it a tool. It's my PowerPoint with my customer, okay? And when I do training with advisors, with service managers, with fixed operation managers, I really hit on this so much. Not only does it help me with today's sale, today's customer, it helps me retain that customer in the future. Again, I talked about it a little bit before. When I go through this, I want to go through the repairs with you. Then I'm going to go back and hit you on the immediate attention, what's broke, what we need to do today. Then I'm going to provide the maintenance items that I found throughout this inspection. And secondly, another thing, if I'm a good advisor, and I've done my homework, I've already looked at your history in my DMS system, whether you have a hard file with hard copies that you have to look at. I'm going to have talked to that. Now, as a customer, do I not look like I've done my homework then? Wouldn't you be a whole lot more happy bringing it in and speaking with me that I've done my homework, that you're bringing your vessel to me, and I'm going to give you 100% to take care of you the best I can? That's what I encourage you guys to do. Go back and look at your write-up. That's the biggest one tool. And we can generate profit with this very, very, very quickly. Am I right? It happens quickly in the service department.
One of the most interesting things was Dan's hour per RO was so much higher than the other advisors, but his customers liked him more. They wanted to do business with him. There could be a line of 5 people waiting to see Dan. I'm free. This person's free. Nope, I'll wait for Dan. It's like, but Dan's going to sell you the world. He's going to bleed you dry. But from the customer's perspective, he's like, Dan's going to take care of me. He's going to know everything that this needs. Now, on a car, that's one thing. You pull over, you're AAA. What happens in a boat? You got your family out in the middle of the water. They don't swim. This could be bad. So we need to make sure we're looking at every single thing, and that time with the walk around, that visual perspective of it is absolutely vital.
And I'm sorry. And communicate it to your customer. Be really transparent about it. Valerie, while you're here, we're going to do this multi-point inspection with you. I'm going to go over everything with you and show her the value in what you're doing with this, okay? It's that important. I really believe that strongly in it.
Awesome. So one of the last things that I would be absolutely remiss of not pointing out that I learned from Dan is when we talk about quality control, we think the boat. But I learned from Dan, quality control is the work order. Quality control is what I like to call the work order audit. When he's closing out a ticket, he is making sure he is double and triple checking it. Do we have all lines addressed? Right there, do you realize that's one of the biggest causes of fixed first visit? You did a great job, but you, oops, forgot line 3. Do we have all 4 C's on each line of each work order? What the cause, concern, issues were, cost? Are the parts billed out properly? Oh my gosh, if we could magically show you how much your parts department lost because we didn't document the work, would that be a lot? Double, triple checking, having another set of eyes look at it even. And then are we within our estimate of time and money? But more than just the basics of QC, Dan would always dig a little bit deeper. He would look for what I refer to as the rainy day list. What's coming up down the pike for this dealer? What's stuff that maybe we've already looked at? We've already diagnosed it. We've already got a parts request list. We've done all the work. We just haven't gotten paid on it. He'd make sure we'd pull that information. Most of our stores do some type of marketing, hopefully, to their service customers, winterization specials or fall specials or spring specials, make ready. Dan would actually customize his promotions, if you will, to his customers' specific needs. Mr. Customer, the last time you were in, this was what our technician found. I know I talked to you briefly, but this would be a great time for us to get that done for you. And if you're having a slow month, this would be a perfect opportunity to say, hey, I'm willing to give you a small discount on your parts or on your labor to get them in during those slower times. If you can work on some of those jobs in your slower season, is that going to make your busier season so much easier? That's one less big thing. And if you start doing that with every single customer that we have, now your slower season's not so slow. You're beefing up the hours per RO there, but your busy season isn't nearly as crazy. The last thing is to have a pre-delivery customer contact. That's literally picking up the phone, not telling them when they come in, but picking up the phone and pre-delivering over the phone with them. Hey, customer, just want to let you know we finished up here. Here's what we found. Here's what's going on. Is there a lot of psychology that's involved in the service drive? A ton. One of the things the psychologists tell us is, as a business, try to make all of the customer experiences as much as possible happy in your store. Even if they've approved the work, when you tell them the total cost, are they going to have a moment? Let them have that feeling of what that total bill is outside of the dealership. Don't actually have them have it done here in the dealership. So in a recap of the habits, develop habits to be on time. Service advisors are always one step ahead of it. Be prepared. Communicate. Document. Maximize the write-up and the walk-around. And QC the pre-delivery. Make sure we're pre-delivering over the phone and adding to that rainy day list. So what can an advisor do to take their skills to the next level? In terms of mindset, in terms of tools, in terms of habits, there's a lot of different things to think about with that. But there's a few best practices that I wanted to share with you. One of them is this one. And I kind of noticed, I said, Dan, you sell like a dentist. Your dentist doesn't say, gosh, you got a cavity. What do you want to do about that? Like, you got a cavity. We need to get this handled. You want us to do it today? Would you like us to schedule it for next month? But you sell with confidence. If we're not confident, the customer's going to doubt it. A lot of times they don't understand what it needs, so we have to be the ones to explain and to sell with confidence, build that value. Have you ever noticed, too, when you go to your dentist, they don't have to really, look at your mouth again. They know when you walk in the door, okay, we had a couple watchers the last time. Let's take a look at that. They've pre-sold, and they're selling based on what they told you the last time. Dan mentioned looking at history. Is that going to put us in a better position to do this with our customers? So making sure we're attaching history, looking at history before each one, whenever that's possible, if they're scheduling it, is absolutely huge. Dan, I think you just said this quote. Remember that the write-up and delivery are the 2 times that you are most likely face-to-face with your customer. Not always the case, but it is often. How you handle it can make or break not only this visit, but any and all future service needs. They're determining, do I like you? Do I trust you? Do I want to do my business with you in the future? Proactively call those customers. Educate the customers about the callback at write-up and get in a routine of calling these people at the same time each day. So if it's 10-4 for you, or if you've got a certain time that works better, make sure you're putting that in. Don't overbook yourself for those times and call them before that so you're not right up to the bell with it. The last thing I want to mention before we open it up for Q&A with Dan, and I know you guys are going to have some good questions for him, is, I don't know if you can see this picture. I actually took a picture of this, this boat lot. It was one of the sorriest ones I've ever seen. It's near Palatka, Florida. Is there sometimes times when the advisor needs to advise it's time for a new boat? It's time for a new motor. You're putting good money after bad. If you've done a great job developing that rapport, I saw Dan sell more cars than anything else out there. Really, really make that your thing, because we don't want to have to work on old material or have customers upset. You work on one thing, something else breaks down. So sometimes it's up to us in sales to make sure that we are helping out the service department with that. There is some bonus content in here that I'm not actually going to get into, but I'm guessing some of you are in here saying, man, I wish my service advisor could hear some of this. So we've included a pretty much verbatim, the content we've covered in this workbook is in the white pages in there in an article form that you can share with your service advisors. And there's also some good tools in there. I know you guys are familiar with the pink sheets from yesterday and the day before. And I've included a job description for service advisor and service manager. If you don't currently have job descriptions, this is so important for your team. You can't manage what you don't measure. You got to tell them what's expected of them. But I want to dig into some questions, and maybe it's a good thing, Dan, that I have the handheld mic, because I'm going to go down into the room and have them give me what their questions are, and we'll get a little help. How about you take this side? I'll take that side. Who's got a question for Dan? Right over here. You want to grab him?
Hello?
How you doing?
Doing good, Dan. Thank you for all your input so far. I'm a service writer at a marina, and I write for 5 different technicians. And daily, I like all the ideas you presented. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Sorry. And I feel like I don't have time all the time to go around and do a walk around or to do all the other things that you suggested without making management or owners upset when I didn't get something else done. How do you balance your time or manage your time better, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, you know, we got to take care of our time, all right? Time's important to us, but if we don't have time to walk around, we need to make time for the walk around.
Okay.
I really believe it is the number one most important time. And you know, you might want to say, I'm going to allow 15 minutes for my walk around, or on something bigger, maybe a little bit more, but you got to give that customer the benefit of the doubt. You got to be there listening to him. You've got to hear his buying clues at this point. Now, when I've heard this, when I call you back, I have an opportunity to know what I've learned from you and sell you in that way. All right? Are you an A-type personality? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So at that walk around, I've got to pick up on all these pieces. Your service writers have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so they can hear twice as much as they talk, okay? And that's what I believe. You're absorbing information from your customer all throughout this. Cars, it's a little bit easier, but still you're absorbing information from your customers. What I like to train advisors on in the car business is look at bumper stickers, look inside the car, look what kind of things you see. Build up a rapport based on that stuff with your customer. If you don't do a walk around, you don't have that. You don't have that at all. You're almost starting out with 1 strike against you.
Okay, I see that. How often do you look at your open work order report, and do you use anything else besides a work order report to see what's out there that you might have forgot about?
Daily. I would say
like
daily.
Many times a day he looks at
Yes,
his open
yes.
order list.
And you know, and I know they used to hate me in the service drive, but every night I was a stickler. I wanted that route sheet redone, so when we came in the next morning, I can see what's going on, all right? If I'm a service advisor and I've got a customer calling me and wanting me to bring something in, and he's got family that's going to be here at 1 o'clock, I need to have his boat back. If I don't have that information, how can I tell him I can take care of him? Really, your service advisor, his main responsibility is to tell your customer what? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. What do you need, Mr. Customer? Yes, we can. Whatever it takes. Be realistic, but find a way not to tell them no.
Hey, Dan, we promised one other thing before I get to the question. That is, what can a manager, what can a service manager, what can a general manager, what can a dealer principal do to help grow their service advisor? How can they tell whether they're doing the things they should do? What's your recommendation for that?
The biggest one I would say is an RO analysis. Every day, I believe a good active service manager should visibly look at the front, the back of every single RO that comes out of your shop. Are your technicians handling all the lines? Are you inspecting for the documentation that you expect them to have on it? Is your service advisor looking on the back and adding up all the estimates from the technicians? And do you see an amount where he's relaying that to the customer? You got to kind of inspect what you expect. Sometimes a lot of service advisors, and Valerie kind of touched base on this, wow, that's $400. I couldn't pay $400, so how can I sell Mr. Jones? So do you know that all that information is going to your customers? The only way you'll know is by doing an RO analysis, really, really, truly. Another thing an RO analysis will do is help you see lost opportunities. Is your service drive missing a ton of lost opportunities? Mr. Jones was in last year. We did his 100-hour service. He's back this year. All we did was pack his bearings and put a water pump impeller on. How much did we leave on the table because maybe our service advisor wasn't knowledgeable enough. Maybe we didn't have a process in place to help him to sell. But as a tool for management, I think the repair order is one of the hugest tools you have to monitor.
You know, and Dan, that really ties into what we've talked about the last couple of days. Behavior that gets noticed gets repeated. And it's also meaningful praise. When you look at the work order and you see good things on there, it gives you the opportunity to say, hey, nice job on this. I see you guys put together a really solid estimate. You got the customer's approval. Any other questions? I think I saw a hand from over here.
Good behavior creates repetition.
All right, next question.
Dan, how do you feel about maybe emailing the completed work order to the customer to kind of say, okay, here it is, Bing, can you look at this? If you got questions, give us a call.
You ain't giving them no personal attention, and I believe customer service is about personal attention. And that's how I look at writing service or running a service department, all right? It's about personal attention to my customer. Because all y'all stores really do want that same business. What's going to make me better than this store? How is my communication in my store going to make me more successful? It's always a growing thing. We always want to get better. And I really, truly believe if we're proactive in a lot of things that Valerie talked about, it's going to make our jobs a whole lot easier every day. A whole lot easier.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Hi there. This is a little bit off the beaten track, but I just was wondering, ratio-wise, how many techs versus an advisor would you suggest? And also, as far as that in marine and power sports, I know they're different. So what do you?
I'm sorry, Valerie, I missed the end.
Oh,
I got how many techs
marine or power sports is what he's looking at, the difference between that. Let me take the first part of that, and then I'll turn it over to you, Dan.
Okay.
Because I'll tell you what, when I was writing service, I could handle maybe 30, 35 tickets. Dan was handling 100 plus. But so to that, it's like, how much work can you do? So on those tickets, how many jobs can I actually put in? There is a thing, Aon, I think, created it called the evolution of the service department that looks at exactly how many hours you can sell based on your technicians and how much service support staff you can have to it. One of the biggest things I've noticed in our industry, both power sports and marine, which I do work in both of them, is it's so different store to store. It depends on so many other variables. But what I like to recommend people do is, if you don't currently have one, make an org chart. Write down specifically who is who, what's their job, who reports to whom. Because right at a glance, you're going to see, do I have too many chiefs, not enough Indians, vice versa, what's going on with this? When you've got issues in the store, you know where the issues are sort of coming from. Looking at that org chart is going to tell you what's going on with that. I think a lot of our stores throw another person, thinking that's going to solve it. If you've got more people but not a process, it's not. You're actually going to make it even worse by putting more people in that. That's my 2 cents. What you got for us, Dano?
And I'm a believer in that process. And she's so right. I don't think that Service Rider A and Service Rider B can be the same with 30 open repair orders. That's kind of a tough thing. The automobile business right now is asking the service departments, the service riders, to probably manage about 25 tickets a day. Now, don't get me wrong, they're coming in the morning and leaving in the afternoon, so there's a lot of more work like that, where in the marine industry we're kind of spread out over a few days and parts and things of that nature. But it's going to be different for store, or person per person. As far as you had talked about open RO reports, you were asking about reports?
Between the service advisors and the number of techs that are involved in your department?
It's a tough question.
That's really a tough question, and I can't give you a concrete answer on that, really. I'm sorry.
That's one of those things I get a lot of people saying, what is it in our industry, the standard? And it's much, much easier for the automotive to give you standards. In our industry, we really, really struggle. That's why I think 20 groups are really helpful. They'll give you an idea. But even there, I mean, I talk with David Parker a lot. We share a lot of information. And he's like, depends. Depends on, your logistics. It depends on the type of product mix you're in. There's just a lot of variables to it. But I think really knowing what you can control, which is how much sellable labor can I have in my shop? What is my capacity? And really watching that lets you know, are you maximizing your capacity or not? Any other questions? Got one here, and there. Okay. That's my order.
On your scheduler, do you recommend a daily schedule, a weekly schedule? When a customer calls in and you're 2 or 3 weeks behind, do you do first in? Do you wait till the boat's there? Do you work it on a schedule? Do you have any ideas for that?
Well, first, if I'm going to be that far behind, I'm going to try to figure out a way, because the way I see it, if I'm telling you I can't take a look at you for 3 weeks, when you hang up, you're going to call somebody else. So I'm going to figure out every way I can get it. But as far as scheduling, I think we do that. We schedule at 60%. Now, here's something a lot of service departments don't take into consideration, okay? I'm scheduling 60%. Today, I upsold Mr. Jones $1,200 worth of repairs. His part's not going to be here till next Tuesday. Well, next Tuesday's schedule is kind of booked already. So I think when we upsell the repairs and we set it for the shop, that scheduling doesn't go on the schedule that she showed you up there, and we kind of get behind the 8 ball. A proactive advisor may take that step a little bit differently and put that on that so we can kind of see. But I think me and Mallory, we scheduled 30 days in advance in writing, and anything beyond that we could put in the system. But I kind of like that writing thing where I can see it, everybody can see it. As she explained, we had the text bought in that if we were writing to a customer, they didn't have to sit there like this. They're not going to go stand in parts. They're not going to go get another job. You know that's not what's going to happen. They're going to stand there and wait for you and get a cup of coffee and walk out the bay and smoke a cigarette while you're writing up this and wait for your answer to finish what they're doing. We created a process where if we were busy, they knew what to do next. And to me, as being a good manager or having a good service department is, it runs efficiently when we're not there. We've put processes in place that if we're not there, it's still going to be a successful organization. I can't be there 24/7. I have a school meeting today. I have a district rep that's going to be here tomorrow. The service guy from Yamaha is going to be in the shop Thursday. I'm going to be with him. So, I've got to create my shop where it can manage itself. And I'm such a believer in process, and that's what that all boils down to.
Awesome. Dan, the other thing I know you and I are big fans of is when it's possible, having a way where we're at least diagnosing in the morning, or you've got someone dedicated to the diagnostic. You try to at least get those in as soon as possible. we might be 3 weeks backed out, but if I can at least give the customer information that, hey, we've looked at it, we've got these parts on order, we're doing at least getting the ball rolling, it's a little more likely to do it. Also dedicating someone to doing quick service, day in, day out type stuff, so we've got that gravy work rolling in. We don't have somebody waiting 3 weeks on end for the basic stuff. So there are some things within our control that help us with that as much as you possibly can. I have another question over here.
Our shop's designed to run with 3 service riders, but we have that revolving door issue with one of them. Do you find I can't seem to find someone qualified to bring into that shop without starting them from the absolute ground up. Any magic place to find service riders?
Truth? Any customer service job. Enterprise people would be a good service writer, okay? They're good at paperwork. They're good with customer relations. They talk to people. They have computer skills. Kind of look outside the box, because here's the deal, okay? Chances of you finding that good, great, experienced third guy, you're going to steal him from him. And then you're going to pay more than he's worth. And now you're going to have his bad habits that go along with him. I'm not opposed to bringing up somebody from the bottom. And here's the deal. Me and Valerie talk about this, okay? McDonald's can pay people minimum wage to ask every day, would you like to supersize that? Every day, every customer, every order. They have a process in place that she talked about. We could plug any employee in there. So if we had the processes in place, it would be a whole lot easier to bring somebody up young that maybe we can grow with and grow the way we want them to grow instead of hiring a seasoned veteran and his baggage.
You know, and I'm here to tell you living proof. I was not a good service writer, but Dan helped me. He trained me. So it's getting those other 2 advisors to not see the new guy as the threat or, well, let's knock this one off as well, because sometimes that'll be happening, especially if we're incentive-based pay. Let's give them the tough jobs. Let's not tell them how to do it. Dan was very, very welcoming and training with me, and creating that type of culture in your shop goes a long way. Some of you attended my class on 2 days ago. I love stealing people from Chili's. Chili's fast food restaurant, they train their people great. They've got some really long-term employees. They're used to having 20 tables set at the same time. I've gotten some great service advisors. We can train them the stuff about boats, but I can't get them to know those skill sets of keeping 300 customers happy and informed. So it's better to look for what those skill sets are and train for that.
And can I say something on that experience, okay? On a monthly gig, I work with probably a dozen car dealerships and training service writers, parts service operations. Really, believe it or not, women are the best service advisors. The best ones I have are all women. And you know what? There's really nothing wrong with me telling the customer, you know what, sir, I really don't know, but I'll find out for you. So experienced isn't the really great cure-all sometimes.
I know I had another question up here. Was it somebody here had a question? I have one here and one there. Okay, I'll get to you in a minute. Let's do you first.
Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Great.
Question on quality control. So once the service is complete, are you doing a QC audit to make sure everything is complete on the ticket, the boat is repaired properly, or do you have a shop foreman doing that? How do you step through that process so when you call the customer and say their boat is done, you know that it's complete and up to the dealership standards?
Me as a proactive service writer, I want to do it myself. Now, I may not be the one to go out on the water with the technician and make sure that everything runs out right, but based on the repair order that I'm looking at, based on my telephone communications, based on how I'm closing it out, based on how the parts are on there, I want to do the QC. When I call that customer and say, you know what, Mr. Jones, I got your boat done. You're going to be great for 4th of July weekends. It's $2,000. I want to know in my heart that I can speak that confidently. So I want to know. And like I said, versus going out on the test drive with the technician, I can do a walk around. I can look at all the lines on the ticket and know if they've all been addressed. I can look at the invoice that I'm printing for the customer and know the dollar amount that's on the bottom. I've made the phone call at that point. I'm in control. I'm taking charge. I'm proactive instead of reactive. My thought on QC is if I have to hire a shop foreman to check what kind of work you do, I might need to find a different technician. That's my thought, okay?
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
My question was, how do you handle objections from the customer when the customer doesn't want to do a walk around?
That's a tough one, but this is our company policy. I'm sorry, Mr. Customer, it'll only take 5 minutes. Well, I'm really in a hurry, but you know what? We stand here arguing about it for 60 seconds, okay? It's really something I have to do. It covers me, it covers you, it covers our insurance, it covers my employees. Even if they're not going to do the walk around where you get to go through each individual item with them, make sure you walk around and notice that they don't have seat covers, seat cushions that blew out on the way to your store, that the prop didn't get stolen while it was sitting in their driveway, that you're going to be responsible for because he assumed it was there when he dropped it off. You got to do that part. That's how to handle that. You're not going to get every customer to do a walk around and have that rapport with you. You're going to have your type A banker that just absolutely is not going to do it, okay? But you got to cover yourself and the liability-wise and get him to do it. Come on with me. It'll just take 5 minutes. You've got a pre-printed form filled out, just a quick couple check marks and get him on his way then. That's how to handle that one.
I've actually seen Dan do this with customers who are like, no, I'm just here to drop it off. And Dan
I got to do this. I got to do this.
Dan did the greatest thing once. He had the guy's keys. He's like, okay, but when can you call me to do the write-up? Because I can't actually get it in the shop until we've written it up.
Yep.
Huh? What do you mean? I'm just dropping it up. No, I got to do the write-up with you or else we can't actually get in the shop. So the customer wound up finding a couple minutes. This is just one of the many opportunities for educating the customer on how to best do business with us. And if we do it with every single one of our customers, it is so much better. I know probably you got a bunch more questions. Dan's going to be hanging out afterwards. We'll be here as well. And you guys have been a great audience. Have an amazing year. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And big thanks to Dan as well. Thank you.